Tell a story when you were glad you studied the papers before signing them. When I was ready to propose to my girlfriend, I went to a pretty well-known jewelry store for a ring. I wanted to make her a surprise, but I understood that most likely she would want to change the ring for another one. And so I asked the workers in advance if I could, if anything, return my $900. They assured me that I could. I proposed to her. My fiancé, as I had expected, found another ring in another store. So I went back to that shop and asked to return the money. The employee looks at me and says, "No problem, just sign this first." I look at the small piece of paper she gives me, already about to sign, when suddenly I see in small print, "I confirm that this purchase is final and not subject to return." I look at the girl and ask, "Why on earth should I sign this?" She put the paper away, called the manager, and he without any questions transferred the full amount back to my card. If anyone's curious, this was at People's Jewelers in Vancouver. I am a musician. Once they wanted to sign me to a label. The contract was written in very, very broken English. The whole document was full of idiocy, but especially I was struck by the following points. First, I must give them my name. Second, I must give away the copyright to all my old songs. Third, if they don't sell out all the physical copies of my music, then I will be obliged to compensate the losses from my own pocket. Fuck them. Edit. Since you ask, I'll leave a link to my Bandcamp. I make industrial, sometimes very noisy, so be ready. Sorry, we couldn't sell 12 million of your copies? How do you think you'll pay for that? When my husband and I were buying a house, my husband signed the papers right away. But I had some things to do, so I could only come in the evening. I arrive and immediately start reading the loan application. Our lender sees this and says, "You know this is not necessary to read, especially since your husband already signed." I said, "No, I want to make sure everything is how I want it." Well, and then it turns out that according to the papers we were borrowing 250 grand at 25%. Yeah, right. I signed nothing and immediately got out of there. The lender started threatening me with court, to which I answered that going to court would be cheaper than paying his overheated interest. Since then, I deal with all mortgages myself. And that lender, by the way, was my husband's school friend. Please tell me you had a serious talk with your husband. I would be furious if my husband signed such an important document without even reading at least the main points. Once when I was getting hired, in the contract it was written that I must work for them at least 4 years. Otherwise, those 4 years would be counted as training, which I would have to pay for out of my own pocket if I left early. Some time ago, our school got Wi-Fi. When I first tried to connect to it, I noticed in the agreement it said the school could take my phone and study its contents. I decided I don't need that and still haven't used it to this day. I decided to buy a phone with a plan for $200. The salesman said they were already closing and it would be better if I came to sign the papers the next day. By morning, the sum in the contract that had been lying on the table all night somehow changed from $200 to $300. I caught them on that and went to another store. My wife and I went to the dealership to arrange our first car. We were going to take it on installment, because the dealership had a special offer for recent college graduates that allowed to get a loan without additional interest. Their finance guy offered us 2 loan options, one for 3 years, another for 5 years. While we were talking, he was assuring us all the time that both options had no interest, so we agreed to 5 years to lower the payments. Then this same guy gives us the papers and rushes us to sign quickly. But we aren't completely stupid. We start reading the details, and what do you think? It turns out the 5-year loan did not fall under their promotion, and under this contract we would have to overpay 6.5%. I think that's a lot more than zero. We got angry and started threatening to leave. Then they, realizing they were about to lose customers, went along and gave us a discount on the car. Damn, how many graduates must fall for this, signing papers blindly? The guy who rented me my apartment allowed me to move out a month before our contract ended, because he already had another tenant lined up. To make it all legal, all it needed was my written consent to move out early and one piece of paper that would change the terms of the original contract. When he brought it to me to sign, I decided to study everything carefully because I knew the guy had recently been in jail for fraud. And I did the right thing, because there I found a clause that said if something went wrong with the new tenant, then I would remain on the hook and would continue paying rent, even though I no longer lived there. When I caught him on this point, he was like, "Oh yes, I added that part to protect myself a little." And then he stole my deposit. Damn, I really should sue him already. I hate you, John. We were selling our business. My wife's car was registered to the company, but we were not planning to sell it. When the lawyer came to us, we immediately made clear that we were selling all the equipment, goods, and so on, except the car. Guess what was in the contract he sent us a week later? And thank God we carefully reread everything and managed to cross out that point before the papers got to the buyer. I found a job 350 miles away from my family and friends. The conditions were just amazing. The interview went great. Plus, I just accidentally met there a guy I had worked with many years ago. Everything seemed so cool that I even rented an apartment within walking distance of work in advance. Formally, I was already hired. It only remained to bring the signed papers. The day before I had to hand them in, I decided to glance at what I was getting into. And there, I saw 3 obvious problems. I don't remember exactly how those points were written, but I'll try to rephrase. First, the position you are hired for is the only position you can have in our company. Even though you may get salary raises, you will never be promoted or change your position. We need people loyal to their position. Second, we do not provide any health insurance services. Your health, your responsibility. Third, if you are fired, or if you yourself leave the company, then for the next year, you cannot work for a company where computers are installed or which has internet connection. I applied for a position there as a technical support analyst. The salary was excellent, but when I saw these points, I immediately ran away from there. They would never have won the 3rd point in court. Never. They're just intimidating people who don't know anything about it. If your employment contract has any shady clauses that limit your life after dismissal, just ignore them, because they almost never have legal force. At my last job in a restaurant, we were sent new conditions of the labor contract. I open it, and there is a non-compete clause. That's when after leaving the job, you for some time cannot work in the same industry. I told my colleagues about it, and as a result, almost nobody signed the new contract. A week later, management had to rewrite it. Non-compete in a restaurant? What mysterious secrets does your restaurant keep? That's so that they don't quit. If a person isn't allowed to work somewhere else, then he will endure his job to the last. If you suddenly think you won't be able to work in other places, non-compete only works when it's about industry secrets that could give another company an incredible advantage. But even in those cases, a court still has to decide whether that ban was justified or not. As a rule, it's 50-50. Once I decided to get a gym membership. Instead of the promised $90 a month, $250 were withdrawn from my card. Upset that I was cheated, I went home. That night, I almost didn't sleep because I was still angry. In the morning, I decided to call them and ask if it's possible to cancel the membership somehow, to which they said it was only possible if I moved to an area where they had no gym. 2 days later, I read our contract and found a clause saying that within 2 weeks, the membership can be canceled without any explanations, and at that point, only 3 days had passed. After that, I very quickly achieved the cancellation. Did they return your money? Yeah, every penny. I came to the dealership to pick up my car. They give me papers to sign. I start reading, and there's a clause that I must allow them to lend my personal information to third parties. No way! And what business did you have with them? For the first time in my life, I brought them a car for repair. They took it, fixed it, but wouldn't return it without a signature. When I dug into that clause, they had to erase my data from the system, after which I just took my keys and left. A dealer has the right not to give you your car only if you didn't pay for their services. If the bill is paid, then they cannot hold your car, otherwise that's theft. In such cases, you can safely call the police. I was looking for a new room, went to see another apartment. I liked it so much that I was ready to give the deposit, but decided just in case to study the house rules, which they had sent me in advance by email. Here it's important to add that while I was looking at the place, they gave me another set of rules printed on paper. They seemed overly strict to me, especially for such an expensive rent. But overall, everything was okay, and I thought nothing could be done about it. Praise Odin. I thought to read their email. The rules in that list were completely different from what they showed me on site. There were gems like 1. If you want to bring a guest, you must write a written request a week in advance, which must be approved by all residents of the apartment. 2. Guests may only be with you until 10 p.m. 3. Guests are not allowed to stay overnight. 4. When someone visits you, he must leave a payment of $20 to cover the cost of water in the toilet. I read all this and thought, so you want me to pay you over $1,000 for the room and not be able to invite friends without all this crap? After that, of course, I bailed on them. There were plenty of other ridiculous rules. These are just the most memorable. $20? Expensive water they have in the toilet. If I had to pay that, I'd do nothing but flush all the time. I was going to freelance for a media company. At that time, I was a graduate with 2 years of experience. They sent me a contract, and there it was. First, salary £6.50 an hour. Second, expectation that I can work 37.5 hours a week. Third, I must use my own car for work with no fuel compensation. And most importantly, fourth, I must give them all rights to any creative works produced by me for 2 years, before the start of work at the new job. I refused. My wife and I had 3 days left to sign the contract for buying an apartment. When they sent us the last version of the contract, we noticed our mortgage interest rate had suddenly become a little higher, like plus 0.2%. We asked what's up with that, and got the answer that they had checked our credit history and adjusted the rate to our current credit score. That left us with a bad taste, and we decided not to sign anything. By pure chance, a week later, our company was bought by another company and moved us to another state. If we had bought the place then, we would have had to either quit or immediately sell it. Thanks a lot for watching. In the comments, you can tell a story when you were glad you studied the papers before signing them. And don't forget to check out our other exciting episodes. Bye!